We put a lot of trust in schools and institutions to teach our kids. But what if the most powerful classroom isn't a classroom at all? What if the single most influential teacher in a child's life has been hiding in plain sight the entire time? Today, let's dig into this really powerful idea about where the real influence over our children truly lies. All right, to kick things off, I want you to imagine something. You're driving your car, you see those flashing lights in the rearview mirror, you get pulled over, and the officer comes to the window and asks for your license. But not the one you're thinking of. I mean, really think about it. What if, in order to raise a child, you had to study for a test, pass it, and get an official license? It sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel, right? But it's a fascinating thought experiment. And this isn't just some wild idea I came up with. The journalist Clara Chow actually explored this very concept in the Sunday Times. And by trying to figure out what a parenting license would even look like, she makes us confront a really tough question. What do we actually consider to be good parenting?
Yeah, and this is where the whole concept kind of falls apart, right? Who on earth is qualified to be the judge? What questions would you even put on the test? And what kind of mistake would be bad enough to get your license taken away? It's a total logistical and ethical minefield. So while the license idea is interesting to think about, it's not a real solution, but it perfectly frames just how seriously we should be taking this role.
So that whole thought experiment, as wild as it is, actually points us to a very real-world problem. A huge gap between who we think is teaching our kids the important stuff and who actually has the most time to do it. A lot of parents, and look, they have the absolute best intentions. They hand off the huge job of teaching core values to institutions like a Sunday school. They entrust this crucial task to dedicated, wonderful teachers. But here's the thing. It all boils down to simple math. I mean, just look at the raw numbers here. A super dedicated Sunday school teacher might get 1 hour, maybe, with a child each week. But a working parent, even with a hectic schedule, gets around 26 hours of direct time with that same child. That difference is, well, it's staggering. And when you see it like this, as a chart, the difference is just impossible to ignore. That tiny little bar on the left, that's the formal teacher's time. And that massive bar on the right, that's the parent. When it comes to the sheer opportunity to have an influence, it's not even a fair fight. So if we're going to put a number on it, it's this. A parent has 26 times more potential for influence just based on time alone. That is a massive and often completely untapped power to shape who a child becomes. This whole idea that a parent's influence is just absolutely crucial is not new at all. In fact, there's a powerful story from way back that shows this principle in action perfectly. So let's take the story of Moses. We probably all know the basics, right? The baby in a basket floating down the river. But here's the part we often forget. He was actually found and then given right back to his own mother, Jochebed, to be his nurse. She's the one who raised him during those incredibly formative early years. And then, of course, he was taken into the palace and raised as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, a prince of Egypt. He got the best education from the most powerful empire on earth at the time. He was surrounded day in and day out by Egyptian culture, Egyptian gods, and Egyptian power. But you have to ask, whose lessons actually stuck? Even with all that elite Egyptian training, it was what his mother taught him in those first few years that truly defined who he was. His identity, his compassion, his deep love for his own people, that all came from Jochebed. It was an influence so powerful that he'd eventually risk everything to defend them. And this really gets to the heart of it. All the wisdom, all the power, all the institutional knowledge of the entire Egyptian empire couldn't stamp out the foundational values his mother gave him in those early, quiet years. Okay, so if we accept this, the parents have this massive 26x opportunity for influence, and that influence can be powerful enough to literally shape history. What do we do with that information? Well, the next logical step is to think about a realignment. This is where a really interesting strategic shift comes into play. It's this idea of a parenting ministry. And listen, the goal isn't to get rid of Sunday school or other programs. It's about realigning the primary focus onto the people with the most time and the most influence, the parents. And the logic behind this is actually super straightforward, but really powerful. First, we know parents have the most time. That's the 26x factor. Second, they're the ones who are there for the everyday moments, the ones who can connect a big lesson to what's happening at the dinner table or on the drive to soccer practice.
So the conclusion just makes sense. The most effective, most powerful strategy is to pour resources and training into parents. You empower the parents, you empower the child. Okay, so as we start to bring this all together, we're back to that central question. In the whole ecosystem of a child's life, with all the different voices and influences, who really holds the title of teacher?
So, what are the big takeaways here? Well, we saw that it all starts with a simple fact. Time is a huge part of influence, and that a parent's potential for influence is immense, 26 times more than a formal teacher. We saw in the incredible story of Moses how that early teaching can shape an identity against all odds, and it all points to one powerful idea. Maybe the best way to teach children isn't just to teach them directly, but to equip their parents to be the amazing teachers they already have the potential to be. And that leaves all of us with one final critical question to think about. In our busy, modern lives, with all the schools and programs and activities, who are we actually empowering to teach our children what matters most? Is it the person with 1 hour a week? Or the person with 26? It's a question of realigning our focus. And the answer, well, it's not just close to home. It is home.